All right. Non-spoilers for Hitman, Jimmy.
Hitman, Hit Space Man.
Yeah, not one word.
No, it's the movie starring Glen Powell.
Yes.
As Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson.
And he's kind of based on a real guy named Gary Johnson who passed away a couple years ago. And he leads this very interesting life because he's a boring person, Holden. It's almost like the premise of Nobody with Bob Odenkirk. I'm a very boring person, but now I obviously am involved with some high octane, intense kind of stuff, but it's not that high octane.
He's a boring philosophy professor who's incredibly jacked.
And Glen Powell. Yeah. We don't ever see him go to the gym or anything. You just see him pet a couple cats.
Fun. I think it's funny that he's just inexplicably jacked. I think that's just a funny point.
It is. I like how he names his cats like Id and Ego.
Yeah, that's good. That's
single professor thing to do. Also very into birding. There's a joke at the beginning of this movie. He's like, I saw 3 pileated woodpeckers at once or something.
Oh yeah, I can't believe you remember the type of bird.
Oh, I remember, Holden, because I just got back from my trip from Ohio, which is why we had a gap week. And I saw a pileated woodpecker.
No way.
And I'm so excited. I'll have to put in the image of the pileated woodpecker I saw. So I'm like, 3 at once. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is directed and written by Richard Linklater. I think Glen Powell actually co-wrote it. According to this,
yes,
which is cool. Richard Linklater wrote my favorite romance trilogy of all time, the Before trilogy. It wrote and directed that.
Never seen them, but I heard they're very good.
They're very good. He did School of Rock.
Oh, one of my favorites, a classic.
He did Dazed and Confused. He's a director that I think is like very good, but a lot of people just like don't think of him among the best. And I think part of that is he doesn't really have like a consistent style. I feel like he's someone like really adapts to like whatever the story needs. He doesn't have like a Wes Anderson or a Tarantino like calling card.
Yeah,
that
he kind of flies under the radar.
Yeah, but I think he's very, very good. I really liked this movie, Jimmy.
Yeah, this movie was great, and for not reasons I was expecting it to be, it's one of these movies that I honestly had no idea what was going to happen next. Yeah, ever. Really, ever. I mean, there was like a scene where it's like, at the start of the scene, I'm like, oh, this is the direction we're going in now. But it wasn't like, okay, well, here's this trope, and here's this trope, and here's this trope. No, it was like, genuinely, how is all of this going to unfold? And you're just watching these characters be like, oh my gosh, these are some risky situations that we're in. How are they going to be resolved? What's going to happen next?
A lot of that comes down to the performances too, I think, because for some weaker performances, you could maybe predict what is happening, but it is so hard to get a read on a lot of people in this movie, I think. Glen Powell, of course, is great, and we can dive into his different performances a little later. But I mean, the love interest Adria Arjona, I don't know if that's how you say her last name, but she was in Andor,
yeah,
and Morbius.
One for
Equally
two,
great.
1 for 2.
She's great, and I think she is. Like, she enters this movie and gives the sense of kind of this femme fatale character. But she is a really hard character to read throughout this movie. I didn't really know what they were going to do with her as the movie went on. And it kept me on my toes with her. And also the one that's not getting as much attention is the Jasper guy. Austin Emilio, I guess is the actor's name. Another character entirely hard to read. I could not
What is this guy's intentions?
Yeah,
is he a complete and utter scumbag? Is he playing people?
Yeah,
is he completely naive to what is happening?
Yeah, and I think those two characters especially walk the fine line of being like, it's intentionally hard to read instead of being just like they're not performing correctly or whatever. I think it's fantastic. They're doing a great job. But yeah, all the performances in this very good. Not a huge cast or anything. Do you want to talk about? I guess we probably shouldn't get too deep into Glen Powell's different personas, but he's great in all of them. Hilarious.
Yes. Well, I just love here's Glen Powell. He's playing this guy Gary Johnson, who, like we said, he's just nobody. He just is nothing. That's why they're like, you're good for this because you're no one. You're not recognizable, even though he's Glen Powell. Yeah. Somehow this jacked, smoking hot his psychology or psychology
philosophy
professor. Are you sure not psychology?
I think actually here it says psychology and philosophy. So
I was like,
and he does a little of both.
Oh, he dabbles. He's a Renaissance man. He's into the birding. He drives a Honda Civic. I really felt personally attacked. I'm like, am I boring, Holden? There was a lot of reflection. I wear glasses.
You're a teacher.
I'm a teacher.
Oh my gosh. Are you seeing yourself? Are you also an undercover hitman?
Yeah, I am.
Oh my gosh.
Hitmen don't exist. I think that was one of the best like bits of the movie. It's like just like the notion that why do people think hitmen are like, why do you think you could just pay someone to risk the death penalty for like $5,000?
Well, yeah, well, that's
presumably people do, but it's not like a career. It's like a one-off thing, and usually they just get caught.
Without like getting into it too much, I think like the first scene where he like first gets into it, that's like the one scene where they really delve into his like his performance and everything, and they kind of go through the whole process his first time. And that's so good. The way he just flies by the seat of his pants there. He's great at improv.
It's very believable too. Like all the scenes are quite believable. It is one of those movies that you are pretty engrossed in it while I was watching it.
Yeah.
Rather than just dissecting, oh, this is a movie and this is like I was actually, very much felt invested in the story and the situations and the scenes that were happening.
A big point of his like whole career thing is that he like adjusts his hitman persona based on whoever he's like talking to, and so that's when you
to make him seem legit. Like,
yeah.
Oh, this is what this person would think a hitman would be like. And since I'm a professor of psychology, Holden,
exactly. He does
I
a
can
lot
figure
of
out what this
them.
person's gonna think.
Yeah, and for every single one, pretty much, even the one, I mean, there's a lot of them we don't spend a ton of time with, but what little time you do get with Glen Powell's performance, you can definitely see how he would make the connection that character would work specifically for that person. I think those little bits of characterization we get for both Glen Powell and his, the person he's talking to, I think it's very great for the small amount of time they get.
Yes. So. Now, I don't want to say too much because I went into this movie knowing very little and I hadn't seen the trailer in a long time. And I think that was good to do just because I like to go with the flow. But I would say if you're expecting that to be the entire movie, that's like the first 45 minutes of the movie. Yeah. I feel like, and the movie changes direction about 45 minutes in to an hour, somewhere in there. And I think it's really a really good direction. That's very interesting. But I would just say that if that's where your expectation is at, because I feel like that's what the trailer sold it as, maybe just know that that's not what the entire movie is like. Yeah. However, I did want to talk about that opening scene because it reminded me of like The Killer, which with Michael Fassbender, the David Fincher movie that came out. Was that earlier this year?
No, that was last year. That was like October or something, I think.
It reminded me of that just because it's like, okay, here's that first 20-minute sequence. Here's my job. Here's everything I do and why I'm so good at it. It reminded me as we see like a progression of some of these montages of him explaining how he does it, what he, all his techniques and stuff. It reminded me of The Killer in that way. You get some monologues of thinking and explaining things. But yeah, I just thought this movie is very interesting because number one, it's just very entertaining. Never know what's going to happen next. Number two, just the performances steering away from the tropes. And then, what was I going to say? Last time I was like, I'm building up to this point.
I don't know.
And it just completely left. Yeah, I completely left my mind. Number three, what the heck was it? It was good. I was literally like, I just need to think of a couple things. Rule of three. Here's my thing. I'm going to hit it. And I just do not.
Okay, you can bring it up haphazardly later.
Yeah, I will. God dang it. God dang it.
Yeah, no, I think the comedy in this movie works really well. I think it's a very, very funny movie. I think it is, like, premise-wise, like, even if you hear that it's a comedy, it wasn't, I still went in not expecting it to be as much of a comedy as it was. I would describe the tone of this as, like, a romantic comedy with this, like, weird crime background, I guess. I feel
somewhat thriller? But not like psychological horror thriller, but just like
the humor and setup.
It's not action heavy at all.
Yeah, the writing of the humor and the setup of a lot of the jokes are very romantic comedy-esque, but it's under this like weird crime thriller sort of like backdrop. It's very strange. I think another thing you should go in thinking, or like with balanced expectations, it doesn't take itself as seriously as you might think it does. Like, as I was kind of expecting it to be, funny for the first chunk or whatever, then maybe it goes in a bit more serious direction. And there are serious moments, but not as much of the movie was that as I was expecting.
It's like a lighthearted, thrilling romance. Yeah, it's like a lighthearted thriller, and I don't know how to describe that. I did remember the point I was going to bring up.
Okay,
and I was going to say the last thing it does really well is it balances it talks about these themes, or alludes to these themes of what is like identity and the self, and like because you have Gary Johnson, who's this timid nobody guy that no one takes seriously. He's not attractive. He just blends in. He's very vanilla. Mm-hmm. And then he puts on these personas, and it's like, oh, wow, you know what? Why don't I just be this persona that is just so much more confident?
Yeah.
And people you think of it like, like drag queens and stuff. It's like this whole other identity that comes out of people, and just embody those things. So I just think of that as was a really cool concept for the film to explore as well. I wish I would have remembered that 3 minutes ago.
Way better. Yeah, well, and I think I don't know if I can exactly pinpoint why it works better in this movie, but a big framing thing for the themes of this is his classes, or he gives multiple lectures that are pretty much spelling out the themes of the movie about finding yourself an identity and everything, trying putting yourself out there. And he has talks about how, sometimes if you go too hard into it, it can blur the lines between fiction and reality. And if you put on a persona and whatnot, a lot of that is spelled out for you. But even though it was spelled out, I didn't think it was heavy handed or anything. I thought it just worked within the context of his lectures, I guess. Maybe that's why it had a good excuse to be there, because he was a philosophy professor. But I don't know. I enjoyed it, even though it ran the risk of being too on the nose.
A movie that I think would pair well with this, or has parallels, but it is quite different, is Another Round. Which, did you ever see that with Mads Mikkelsen?
It's been a while, but possibly. I guess I don't see the parallels, but explain.
But you have this teacher there's classes throughout that's kind of a framework, that kind of indicating some of these character changes, who is doing something that it's very out of the ordinary for them, and they kind of lead this very dull life. They're trying to reinvigorate it. And in Another Round, it's them getting drunk at school, the teachers, and how that, and all these all gosh, these decisions. When is this going to blow up in this face? This things that's very unprofessional. That obviously doesn't quite go the thriller-esque romantic route, but I just think that there's a lot of kind of similarities, parallels, almost a double feature that you could do between those two. Highly recommend it. Another Round.
I'll talk
Mads Mikkelsen.
The parallels I have, and I guess they're not so much parallels, but the movie that I watched last night that has very similar themes of identity, explores it in a completely different way and very different tone. Was I saw the TV Glow.
Oh, nice.
And I'll talk about it a little bit in What Are You Doing or whatever, but I think I watched this Saturday night, and I watched that last night, and I'm they're kind of doing similar things with the identity theme, completely different, explorations of it. It was just very interesting, but I've really enjoyed this movie. I want to watch it again. I honestly thought about watching, because my roommate wanted to watch it with me too after I had mentioned it, so I thought maybe I was going to get to it a second time for recording, but I haven't yet. I'm sure I will in the next week or so.
This movie is pretty steamy as well. I watched, so full disclosure, I actually watched the first 30 minutes of this. And I was I knew I wasn't going to watch the whole thing in one sitting, because I wanted to start it last night. I was going to watch the rest this morning just because of a time thing.
Sure.
And I was okay, I'm just watching the first 30 minutes. I was oh, that was really delightful. I was I'm really into this. It's just getting late. I need to go to bed. I wasn't falling asleep or anything. So I was just paused it. I'm man, I should recommend this movie to my mom. And then I watched the rest of it this morning. I'm I would like to recommend it to my mom, but it's a little steamy, so it might be a little awkward. But it is I think it's a very palatable movie. I think a wide audience is going to enjoy this movie. So yeah, I think it's quite cool.
One kind of going along with that whole steamy thing, and I didn't mention it in the performances, the two leads have fantastic chemistry.
Incredibly good
They're
chemistry.
so good. It's some of the best like romantic chemistry I think I've seen in a movie in quite some time. Maybe that's the Linklater, thing, because I also think that about the Before movies. I think they've got very good chemistry in those movies, of course. Maybe he's just very good at directing that. But yeah, I thought they were great. So.
Emily, my wife, is going to be upset that she missed this one because I think she would have liked it.
Yeah.
I think she would have liked it. I said, "You want to watch it?" She said, "No, I don't need to. I don't think if I would have known it was a little steamier."
She's not a fan of the Hitman video game franchise. She's like, "No, I don't want to see that."
Agent 47.
Yeah, no, I don't like Agent 47. He's bald.
Wow. No, this was a great film. Really well edited, well paced. Mm-hmm. I was completely just invested in the story throughout, which for us, seeing a movie or two every week, you get pretty desensitized.
Yeah.
So highly recommend, especially if you have a Netflix subscription already. It's a shame it didn't get a wider theatrical release.
That's something to note. It is a Netflix movie. It's probably one of the best Netflix movies I can think of. But it is also a movie that was just bought at a festival by Netflix. It's not like it was one of their originals they had, made and everything for them. I was trying to think about that. I'm like, I'm trying to think of movies that they've actually made that I like, and the only one I can think of is like The Irishman. I think Scorsese made that for Netflix, but I think Marriage Story was like bought too. I don't know. Most of their good movies are just bought at a festival. So
the New York Yankees of the streaming services. But I think let's you can give it a rating here real quick. Hold on, and then let's dive into spoilers.
Yeah, I think I'm sitting at like an 8.5 with this. I'm liking it more as I sit with it. I want to watch it again. It's just a really good time, and as you said, pretty palatable. I think for most audiences. So yeah.
So definitely recommended over Red Notice or The Gray Man or probably that new Jennifer Lopez movie.
Oh, yeah, the one that looks fake.
Atlas.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that one, to be fair. Mm-hmm. I have seen it in Atlas, though.
Mm-hmm. I have too.
For kids, an atlas is a map.
I loved reading road atlases when I was a kid.
So
I was weird. I loved maps.
You would go to the rest areas, and I would grab the maps and just look at them like a nerd.
I had this really big one that was just of the various states that I used to pour. I don't even know if my parents still have it. I used to pour through that one all the time.
There you go, Holden. Looking at maps. Let's dive into spoilers.
Yes. So we can talk about maybe Glen Powell's different like personas he puts on. I think they're all very good, very funny. I think he's very good at like he obviously, especially in comparison to his like main Gary Johnson persona, he's really good at like disguising himself. I think it's well enough that I guess he shows up at court, so people kind of know anyway. But if he wasn't showing up to court, probably people wouldn't recognize him on the street. My favorite one is probably the Patrick Bateman one.
Yeah, that's one.
He's very good at that. It's a very good impression of Patrick Bateman from American Psycho.
Yeah.
He has the one that is like Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
It's like the red bowl cut.
Yeah, that one was weird.
I liked that one, just a little creep. The Russian one's good. I mean, they're all good. We could just like go through them all. There's the more country one.
Yeah, the redneck one. I was like, I felt like they really teased him not being that good of shooting a gun as like tell that was going to expose him. And they teased it like multiple times.
Tease it a lot.
I was just waiting for him to blow his act.
Honestly, I think it still kind of works just as a way of showing him like improvising really well. Because he like every time it's like brought up under like some certain like when he's in his persona, he's really good at covering it up.
I don't need the practice, you know. That. I'm like, he pulls one of those, he is not gonna hit that.
And then when he's with Madison or whatever,
Madison,
later, and then he's just like, "Oh, you're never at this distance for my job." Pulls it real close, just shoots it point blank. Yeah, that was great. I loved that.
I was really nervous. There's a lot of just the tension in all those scenes, really. Like even for someone who's a professional, he's always like wriggling around. Apparently they use some of the real stuff for this. So like the guy, the kid who like pays him video games is like a real thing, I guess.
Okay, interesting.
So that's kind of a funny little story there.
It is like, I can suspend my disbelief for this. I cannot believe, though, that there are this many people in this area that try to hire hitmen, right? It's just,
hold on. I've tried to hire a hitman to kill you.
Oh, well, I guess, maybe Sioux Falls has the same sting operation. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was funny. It's this, I don't even know where it's in Texas, I think.
Oh, I think it was New Orleans.
Oh, it's New Orleans. Okay. I guess it is a big city there. So, maybe that.
A lot of people trying to kill other people in the bayou.
Maybe.
Beat them to the crocodiles. I love it. Just like they ask him, like, "Oh, how are you going to dispose of a body and stuff?" And he just has all these quick answers.
Scene, yeah, he's like, "Oh, we just toss the fingers out the window as they're going, blow the head up with a stick of dynamite, so then the dental records are obliterated."
You just blow that sucker up.
That was a good performance by that guy too. I thought that was a very good just character in the movie. But yeah, that first performance, him adapting, was so fun, and I loved seeing his like crew being surprised by how good he was too. And then the juxtaposition of that with him like writing home afterwards and just telling the most boring story about birding that they don't care about, like with the pileated woodpeckers, and they're just uninterested. Yeah, I thought that was really good at just showing kind of the two sides to him. And then over the course of the movie, those two sides kind of merge until the end of the movie when it is kind of a combination of the two.
Yeah, Ron,
yeah. We like Ron.
Yeah, we love Ron. The cool guy, Ron.
And Ron is like, he puts on that persona. It is very cool. You can easily see why he would like latch onto that and want to kind of keep going with that. And then, of course, that's what ends up attracting Madison and everything. And so he just runs with it. I love their dates they go on. I thought were fun. Him showing up to the like dog event.
Yeah,
I loved that.
Very cute.
That was the cute dogs. Him running off and playing with the kids.
Just throwing a little football.
Yeah,
with kids.
Go long.
Yeah, just all very wholesome. You're like, oh, this is all so nice. Some steamy scenes.
Yeah, lots of sex.
And you're like, this is all too nice. Like, I'm waiting for the second, foot to drop.
You just know because like their relationship is completely built on a lie. So you're just like, oh, this is going to be bad at some point.
This always goes well.
There's never any problems with this. Doesn't completely fall apart in the way I was expecting, but it's still like, I guess, they go on that date there at the ice cream place and they run into Jasper there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's like Jasper had been established earlier in the movie, obviously, about, being this kind of crooked cop guy.
Yeah.
Like, I think he like beat up some teenagers or something when I don't know, got suspended for a while.
Yeah.
But
got replaced by Gary.
Yeah, and that's how he got the job. But they see him there, and that's like the first time he like shows up there. I'm like, I cannot get a read on this guy. Like, what is he thinking currently? Like, does he recognize Madison? I don't know. Like, does he understand what's happening here? And then like, even like after that, when it's revealed he knew who Madison was, he's like, kind of
he's like, don't even
it's
worry
fine.
about it.
Like I think he literally says he screwed his fair share of suspects or something like that. Yeah. Literally.
You're just like, is he just playing him now? Like, because he talks about, because there's the whole scene, not to just skip ahead, but there's a whole scene where it's the ex-husband.
Yes.
And they're all mad at him because he's like, he literally says like, when someone gets upset, you tone them down. You like you ease their attention, bring them back down. And every time that you see Gary get riled up, he like, eases him, stops him from being so anxious, talks him out of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh gosh, he's just playing. He knows how to play people too. So it's like, is he just playing him to get what he wants? What is happening here?
And it kind of goes back and forth a few times as to what he's actually doing. Sometimes he's like, it seems like he's kind of trying to expose Gary. Sometimes he's like kind of on Gary's side. It's very strange. So I really liked that whole tension. Good spin on a character that you've seen before. That someone just discovers the secret and then, tries to get a bunch of money out of him or something to silence him. You've seen that a bunch. Yeah, I mean, there is the scene with the where Gary is out on the date with Madison, and then they run into the ex-husband and everything.
Yes,
pulls the gun on him. That was a very tense scene. I think that's. I think if I could be misremembering, Gary seems to like almost scare himself in that scene with like how far he goes, pulls out the gun and everything. I don't know if the gun was loaded or anything, but regardless, just how far he's at least willing to act in that regard.
I was surprised he pulled the gun on him. I thought he was just going to punch him.
Yeah, honestly. And and then there's the scene where the ex-husband tries to hire Gary to kill Madison.
Which again, the improvisation of like, oh, he can't see me, I'm going to sit in the booth next to him. Because that seems like a thing that a hitman would do. Like, it's for your protection.
The setup to that scene should have seemed more obvious too. Because they're like, oh, we didn't get any, like, this is like last minute. We don't have any info on this guy. Or sorry, just going to have to wing it.
I figured it was going to be him.
I didn't even think of that option. But I thought it was very good, very tense. And then, I like how like he scares the guy away, and then, but of course there's no camera or anything. So he convinces the crew for the most part that he just got up and got scared and ran away.
Yeah.
I really liked that.
Yeah. But you at that time though, you really think Jasper is onto them. Like he's just like, oh gosh, this is going to blow up. So it's like all these situations where he keeps like just pinning him into a corner. He continues to like, and as an audience member, you're like, it's going to blow up eventually, but you just like keeps wriggling out. And then the real thing that kind of puts a wrench in everything is when she kills her ex-husband.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, because she did it.
Oh yeah,
it's like, oh gosh.
I think they do a really good job of making it so the cops aren't sure, but because it shoots her right in the heart, right where Gary had said to shoot someone to kind of stop the bleeding as much.
To not make a mess.
Not make a huge mess. But then the best scene is when he confronts, or when he has to like go undercover and he's using like the notes app.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Because I was like, how are they going to get out of this one?
That was a moment where like I was just in my house and I was like quietly cheering. I was like, this was such a cool scene. It was very creative. It pushed their improv to the test. Really put Madison under the microscope too, and then they just did such a great job. And it was also a great way of a great and unique way of like kind of mending their relationship a little bit
because they left off on a bad note.
Yeah, and so he comes and is like literally says like, cops are listening, I'm on your side or whatever. And then the way that he's helping her out and everything, they kind of through this whole investigation kind of mend that relationship, and I thought it was really unique. It's cool.
Yes, and I thought they were going to blow it during that conversation.
I did too.
I thought she was going to call him Gary. I thought she was going to say like, "Get the F out of my house, Gary." Like I was just waiting for her to slip up.
Well, and that's when we mentioned in non-spoilers, I kept expecting this movie to go in a much more serious or darker direction than it did go. And it kind of does a little bit later, but it's not as significant in the movie as I was expecting.
Yeah. There's no shootout or anything. There's no violent payoff to anything.
Yeah.
It's all just in dialogue, which is cool.
So yeah, that's my favorite scene of the movie. But then later on, when he goes in to check on her, and Jasper's there, that's when you get the classic like, "Hey Ed, I'll help you out. I won't say anything if you just give me some money. Give me that life insurance policy."
Which was really clever of him because he's like, look, this is a win-win. Either you were like, when you talk to yourself, like when you put on that amazing performance, like either that was going to blow up in your face and I was going to get my job back, or you got away with it and now I get to get your hush money, which I know you have because you just received $1 million.
That money.
So he's like, I thought he had a heart attack when I was watching it. I was like, oh, he's having a heart attack right now.
When he started like keeling over, I was like, oh, that's right. She went and got the drinks. So she definitely poisoned him, and that's what happened. But yeah, and I don't think they ever, she just says she puts a bunch of pills in it. It doesn't really specify. But yeah, I liked that. And kind of going alongside that, Madison kills 1.5 people, let's say. But
1.5. But I mean, murder, it's fine.
Well, no, but like she doesn't. She'd like when I described her as a femme fatale earlier, a lot of the times with that archetype, you have her kind of maybe betray the main character at some point after seducing him in some regard. That doesn't really happen. Their feelings are genuine, and she does kill people, which isn't good, of course, but she does ultimately. It's her getting in over her head, kind of mistaking advice that Gary gives her and everything. She's more empathetic than I was expecting, I guess. Especially, I mean, with the like abusive relationship she was in and everything. But yeah, just that character didn't go at all what I was expecting. It was a bit more standard romance, which I was expecting it to be more twisty and turny, which in some regards makes it a twist in and of itself. It wasn't.
Yeah, I think it was twisty and turny, just not when and where I was expecting it to, which was cool. Mm-hmm. And again, when we see a bunch of movies, it's nice when something does something different, and this felt like a very fresh movie. It's like, oh, I haven't quite seen something like this. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Another takeaway from this: don't make yourself expendable. Don't because Jasper was very expendable.
Yeah,
and I love how they just like know what,
fell into place.
We can get away with it. We can kill this guy.
Nobody likes him. He's already depressed. Like we can make it look like a suicide or whatever.
Like the police want him to go away. Like he's got like no loved ones. Like the incentive here is to just let this trickle away.
Yeah.
Which is
seemingly they make
dark.
it work. Yeah, no, it is dark. I mean, it's
such a twisted, happy ending,
and it's. I mean, him killing Jasper at the end is kind of him fully embodying the Ron role. Finally, like him actually finally just killing a person. Like in some ways,
not necessarily. I don't think they fully embody because you said like they do find the balance. It's like him
like accepting
him going out of his Gary Johnson shell.
Yeah.
And starting to embrace more of Ron as part of his identity.
Yeah. Yeah. And then seemingly there's an epilogue where they seem all happy and everything.
Yeah.
My one thing I don't understand is like how I assume he quit that job with the police. Wouldn't they like find out he's like dating Madison at some point and be like sus of that? I don't know. That whole aspect seemed like strange to me, but I don't know.
But according to him, she turned her life around and she was completely innocent of that crime from what they know.
Yeah, I don't know.
And got out of a bad situation.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because we know all the details. I'm like overthinking it, but
I could suspend my disbelief for that.
Yeah. I mean, I like that they had a happy ending. They're fun.
Yeah.
Even though they killed someone. Two people combined.
Yeah. But I mean, combined, we're still beating them.
Yeah.
All right, that does it for our review of Hitman. Tell us what you think down in the comments.